What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie. Still with allergies, so my voice is this low. I can feel it reverberating in my chest as I speak, which is interesting. But I don't know. Allergies don't seem to be going anywhere. But I'm continuing my deep dive into Frank Zappa's live, everything that's out there available, bootlegs, stuff on the internet, official releases. Starting off with a deep dive into the Summer Fall 74 tour. We're approaching the end of it. Got two shows from Naperville, Illinois, sort of a suburb, like sort of southwest of Chicago proper, but in the Chicago area in Illinois. Yeah, two shows. I'm going to talk about them, review them, and then rank them. Not going to play music from them, just to give that heads up. But yeah, this is my favorite tour Frank played. This sort of recent deep dive has sort of verified that my initial feelings about it were correct. This is my favorite tour. By this point in the tour, the band is Napoleon Murphy Brock as always, George Duke as always, Ruth Underwood as always, Chester Thompson as always, Frank Zappa as always. But about 9 days ago, a week ago, Tom Fowler broke his hand. We've had two replacement bassists. We had Mike Urso for a show, and for this and the last several shows, we have James Birdlegs Humans, who is fitting in fantastically. And for the 11/29/74 show, the one I'm going to talk about first, this is a really interesting mix because the bass is super present and super just like right here in the right frontal earlobe listening space. And it is incredibly clear. It is very in the front. You can hear everything Birdlegs is doing. It is a fascinating listen. In fact, the entire first show, which is only the first hour of the show, so it's not a complete show, does have some interesting things played, really fantastic solos, is an incredible, just the mix is really interesting. And after listening to all these songs that have a lot of the same songs, repeating a lot of the same set lists, the mix on this listen is fascinating. And there are Duke keyboard sounds. There are things Ruth is doing on percussion. There are just moments that really stand out that shape the songs in different ways because the mix is so different. And then having Birdlegs so up front in the mix also provides a pretty unique listening experience. And maybe if this was the first show you listened to, those things wouldn't jump out as much. But having listened to all these other shows and familiar with these songs and the officially released mixes, this tape just, it's a really neat thing to listen to just because of the way certain instruments jump out and things like the Tamershi Dog Meat segment, that's where the show cuts, unfortunately. Echidna Zarf, Don't You Ever Wash, those more complicated pieces. It's really interesting to hear the way things jump out. So for the first show, the one on the 29th, Birdlegs is heavy in the mix. The sound is really cool. We only got an hour, but it's a great hour. Opens up with Tush Tush Tush. Frank's ripping off some licks in there to make sure he's in tune. We get a really nice Stinkfoot. The first solo is kind of maybe Frank figuring things out still, that short little burst between the verses. Then we get a really nice, long, typical Stinkfoot solo. Maybe not one of the best Stinkfoot solos of the tour so far, but one of those that Frank's exploring. It's kind of long, it's kind of mean. It's just Frank doing your typical Stinkfoot stuff. Then we follow with, and I think I've said this maybe 4 or 5 times now, the best Redunzel solo of the tour so far. Like, this thing is just absolutely fantastic from start to finish. Opens up with like a very nice, almost melodic theme by Frank. Like, he knows what he's doing. He knows where he's going. He has a plan. The playing is so confident that we're starting to get a little bit of that weird 74 Chester fill action where it seems like he's like, dun, 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 like the beat's just going to fall apart and like we're going to like immediately go into entropy, as solos earlier in the tour would frequently do, like purposefully. That doesn't happen, but Chester's able to like drop those fills in and like kind of push the tension, and Birdlegs is still just keeping it together because he's really, really comfortable with Redunzel, and so much so that Frank would put him on the studio version of this song. The solo really has this almost, it doesn't go deeply Middle Eastern like something like a Shake Your Booty tango or something that he would do maybe later in like the later 70s, but there is this slightly like Middle Eastern vibe that just kind of creeps in, that gives it this little sense of mystery. It almost feels like it's the soundtrack to like a thriller movie or some kind of Bond escapade, because there really is this sort of melodic thread and energy that runs through this entire solo that creates tension, that creates drama, yet it never really falls apart and gets weird. It's just one of those incredible Redunzo solos. Duke is just doing some great stuff on the keyboards in the back. Absolutely amazing. If there's a complaint, it just seems to end too suddenly. Like all of a sudden we're in the dun 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 dun, that part. And you're just like, oh no, that was just a little too abrupt. But before we get to that abrupt ending, it is just one of the most interesting, compelling solos. And I've argued for, like, even if you just put a box set out of like highlights of the 74 tour, I think there have been a couple comments that have been like, once Fowler broke his hand, I don't think Frank was as on top of things as far as recording those shows. So there possibly aren't even tapes of these shows, which is unfortunate because they're fantastic. But another amazing guitar solo. And then we get the great Duke energy for his solo. Then we get a Cosmic Debris, really funky as always. I think this works really well after Redunzel, especially when Frank's solo is as intense as it is, because Cosmic Debris, you have the Nappy solo, you have George and Nappy kind of going back and forth, you have the Duke solo, you have like Frank's solo. There's kind of a weird space in his solo in here, like he doesn't quite know what to do, but eventually he kind of figures it out. When we get to the wrap the newspaper round my head part, Birdlegs is playing this really interesting sort of weird bass run that just makes it feel different than every other Cosmic Debris. Definitely not as funky, but definitely very interesting. But a really good placement of Cosmic Debris, kind of mixing up the set list, not going immediately into Village, and it works. It provides this sort of a looser, freer, less at stakes type energy that works really well. Then we get a full stop after that, which is rare in 74. Then we go into Village, Echidnas, Don't You Ever, drum solo, Penguin, to Mercy Dogmeat to close out this tape. The Village, the bass just sounds different again. It's got this weird little odd vibe, almost like this dance hall country, like doom 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 doom. I mean, it really is just a much more, I don't know, just I'm square dancing or something. It's an interesting, but it works. Echidna's Ruth sounds fantastic in the mix. You can really hear a lot of the percussion that she's playing. Don't You Ever. So I'm listening to Echidna's and just blown away by what Ruth is doing. Then we get to the Don't You Ever, and we get to that talking part in the middle. Frank is like, Ruth is looking for the beat. Do you think she will find it? Oh no, where is the beat? Like, again, calling out Ruth, despite the fact that Ruth sounds absolutely amazing. I'm glad I don't have the ears where the only thing I hear, or maybe like one little mistake that Ruth makes, and not be floored by everything else she does. Duke has a really cool synth sound in his short little solo. We get the drum solo, the Penguin solo, super jazzy, super laid back. Frank takes time to develop it, goes into this funky little melodic attack in the middle. Really smooth, really confident, builds up the energy nicely. The bass playing is fantastic. Just absolutely fantastic Penguin solo. The sequence of the Redunzel solo, which is just epic in a Redunzel way, the fun lightheartedness of Cosmic, the sort of jazzy fluidity of Penguin. Like, Frank is just hitting it out of the park. And you know that if the tape went on past the Dogmeat, there's probably a Montana that's going to be dropped, or who knows what else, because he's dropping weird stuff at the end of this tour, as we're going to find out in the next show. So, if there is a tape of this, like, what ends the show? What else does Frank bring out? Is there another Dupree's? We haven't got that in a while. So anyways, then we get a Tamershi. And Frank does a little, at the end of Tamershi, before we drop it in a Dogmeat, he kind of conducts the band for a while. And Nappy is just hitting this like floating sax note that just kind of hovers there. And Frank's kind of conducting the band around this note. It's probably less than maybe 30 seconds or 40 seconds. But it's a really interesting sort of pocket between Tamershi and Dogmeat that just makes this a little more interesting. So Excellent, excellent listen. Worth checking out, especially for the solos. It's only an hour, but yeah, a great listen. The next show, 11:30:74, is at the same venue. This, unfortunately, is an audience tape, very echoey sound. It gets better as the show goes on, or maybe I just get used to it as the show goes on, but it's definitely not the best sound. And I do think that in my ultimate rankings, I'm going to drop it down a little because of the sound, because there are moments, especially having just listened to the previous one, in which the mix is so fantastic, in which, like, the Penguin to Mercy dog meat segment, you're just like, it's a little bit flatter and things aren't jumping out as much. And you're like, okay, this is just pretty much your perfectly standard run through of these songs. But there are other tapes from 74 in which they just sonically are better listens because of the way instruments are highlighted. But it's still a really, really good show. Tush 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 opens. Stinkfoot is next. Really nice sort of exploratory solo. A lot of little pockets of different ideas. Not a very cohesive solo, but at the same time, Frank's doing a lot during the solo and it's satisfying. Another excellent Redunzel solo. Just, I don't think it's as good as the previous one, but it's up there. It's still just, he is like in top form as far as Redunzels go. We even get a little bit of like an Inca Rhodes energy towards the end of this solo, where we're really getting this just like these sort of epic, uplifting like swells that are fantastic. Thompson's doing his weird little drum fill thing where it feels like it's going to fall apart. There are moments where it does feel a little bit fragmented, but when Frank always kind of gets back in the groove, you're like, oh no, it's just a little more of a complicated piece than the previous one. Towards the end of it, we get this really nice, just low run of notes that get things kind of funky. And it just keeps going and going and going. And I think the reason maybe the previous one is better is just because it's a little more cohesive from start to finish. This one is just like Frank doesn't ever want to stop playing. And it kind of all makes sense, but it also all makes sense in the fact of like a man who's just rambling, over and over. And like, you can connect the dots musically in what he's doing, but it's just maybe a little more of a Dolly-esque picture instead of something else. But still, just another absolutely fantastic Redunzel solo. We get a Village, Echidnas don't. This is one of those where the sound loss definitely just doesn't make it as enjoyable. Just loses something. Early misstep and Don't You Ever. Like, I think somebody messes up. I'm going to give Bird Legs, probably him, just because he's relatively new and these are hard songs. But it's always interesting when you hear this band mess up. And then after the drum solo, we go into I'm the Slime, only the second one from 74. The previous one was way back on September 4th, I think it was. That one was obviously like, hey, we haven't rehearsed this. This one sounds rehearsed. The solo is short, quick, to the point. It's almost like it's not even there. It's like you get Village, Echidnas don't, the drum solo, this weird little I'm the Slime in the middle. Then we go into Penguin, and it's almost like, oh, did I just hear an I'm the Slime? Was that interesting? Yeah, it's like they just play it, and then Frank solos, and then we're through it. I don't know why, but it's weird, but I'm glad it's thrown in the list. Towards the end of the tour, we're doing interesting things. Really fantastic Penguin in Bondage. Frank, a couple times on these, for these solos, he's using this sort of watery, deep psych tone that gives everything a little more like weirder energy. He's using that in the Penguin solo, even though it starts off with this really like sort of tiptoeing in with an idea, and then it kind of gets weird and psyche, kind of gets nice and bluesy after a while. Another fantastic Penguin solo. We get the To Mercy Dog Meat Girl segment, and during the Building a Girl, I think it's Duke, and it's kind of hard to tell because of the mix, is just repeating this duh, 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 this like throbbing like chord over and over again, and it gives this whole Building a Girl just a different vibe. And maybe that's always there and it's not present in the mix, or I haven't noticed it, but it's really present in this. And I'm just like, yeah, another really fascinating Building a Girl, which if you don't know, is just Frank conducting the band and they're doing all these noises, and it's a really awesome little segment. We get a Dynamo Hum, which before Frank starts it, he makes everybody scoot back and sit down. Then he attacks college. Then he attacks going back in time. He attacks America. He attacks the dinosaurs. He attacks Jesus. He just keeps singing Move Back, and then he keeps taking us back in time and just complaining about modern society for a while. It's kind of a amusing little rant. We get a Dynamo hum. We get a really nice, and then we get Pajama People. 6 times it was played. This is the last of the 6. 18-minute version of this. Really nice opening. We're coming in like really slow and kind of jazzy, taking our time. We get the song. We get that really nice long written out section where Frank's like, playing a guitar part, kind of like a Fish type divided sky type thing that he plays before we drop into the solo section. We get a really nice funky Duke. The synth sound Duke is using in this solo is fantastic. And these solos in 74, it just really feels like Duke has as much time as he wants. He's patient. He's not rushed. And then Napoleon comes in. Feels like he has as much time as he wants. It's patient. It's not rushed. Napoleon's playing is just fantastic on this. And then what else do we have? Chester comes in. He gets the Chester Duke Napoleon interplay is fantastic. At one point, Frank comes in and starts making like these weird duck noises, and like Nappy will like mimic him on the saxophone. So we get this little back and forth between Frank and Nappy, and then Ruth gets a little solo, and then we get a bass solo, and then some woman comes up on stage. The woman comes up on stage later, right? Yeah, no, some lady comes up on stage and she's ranting about something, says something about progress. So Frank quotes progress, the ahead of your time, ahead of our time, ahead of your time, ahead of their time. Mother's performance. Then Frank kind of conducts them through some chaotic stuff. And then we go back into the song. We get a little quote from like I think it's like an Air Force military, like marching type song. We get a little full band quote of. Yeah, just a really awesome 18-minute monster version of Pajama People. That's fantastic. That if it was available in excellent sound and somewhere in the vaults, would make for a great release. Then Frank just tears into Camarillo Brillo. Seems like a super fast version. Later on, they play Oh No. Also seems kind of fast. Then we get a Montana. And Frank says, we're going to play it slow. We're going to go into this new song really, really slow. It's not that slow. Definitely much faster than the Helsinki one, which was a ballad at that tempo. And we get essentially a 13-minute Montana that includes an Any Downers jam. And the solo on this is just, Frank is kind of taking his time with the solo. He has this really cool kind of thematic motif that he's kind of playing with. But Chester is super busy and is definitely filling up a lot more space than normal, it seems, at this point. But Frank is not like responding to him and still staying kind of patient and slow. And that contrast between the two of them is fantastic. He has a lot of really cool melodic ideas that Frank is playing with. Does these really low funky runs again. Things start to really chill out after several minutes. And then we get to the point where, and this has been sort of the MO for Montana for the last couple shows, is we just leave Montana completely. Like we're in a neighboring state. We might even be up north in Canada. Like this doesn't even sound like anything like a Montana sounds like. Frank's just playing around. He throws in he starts playing these really nice, smooth, funky chords, and eventually drops like that opening, the chords from George Duke's For Love, which gives us an apostrophe 50th anniversary connection, because those songs were dropped on that. No, was it apostrophe 50th anniversary? No, it was Wazoo, the Waka Wazoo apostrophe. But we get the conceptual continuity connection from Frank playing these George Duke songs. We got the release of those songs a couple years ago. And then we get into this total breakdown of the song where Frank's just kind of trilling around. You can hear Bird Legs in the back, just kind of keeping it simple but effective. Wish he was higher in the mix. Then we're in like Zoodalour's 76 territory, where there's this really free form action and Frank's just kind of skating around, playing chords, kind of just sketching out ideas. And then all of a sudden he just like goes into a heavy version of Any Downers. Just He starts bending notes. He returns to the riff. There's not really any sort of jam around the indie downers. It's just he plays it, messes around with some notes, plays it again, and then we get this weird little like rhythm solo. I think Duke is dropping these like cool "Don't Eat the Yellow Snow" wind effects in the background. Gets kind of spooky, atmospheric. It almost really sounds like nothing else this band does. Not that it's like inventing a new type of music, but it's going into a territory that the Mother's 74 normally didn't go into. And then at that point, Frank's like, after 13 minutes of a Montana, he's like, all right, we're done. We go into Tush Tush Tush. Then for the encore, we get an "Oh No," "Son of Orange County," which is just sounds epic as always. Just can't believe you won't wash up. So we got some more Marty smelling my beard action. And then we go into an awesome, like 10-minute closing, More Trouble Every Day. The solo in this starts off slow. You know Frank's in it for the long run. He's going to push it until somebody backstage tells him, we got to get off the stage. The show is over. He takes his time, get a little magic fingers tease in there. Frank's just out there. He's having fun. He's exploring ideas. He's like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. It's your typical Frank guitar solo ending, and that he's not going to build it to this climactic, volcanic end of show fireworks erupt, but in a way where like, I'm just going to keep playing until they tell me to stop. And I know this band's going to like hold it down for me. Absolutely fantastic ending. Great, great, great performance. I wish the sound was better, because I think if the sound was better, I would probably rank it better. But two really good shows. The guitar playing at this point is fantastic. Bird Legs Humans fits in perfectly. If I were going to rank these two shows among all the other shows from the Summer Fall 74, I have them both right there. I have the first one is all the way down at 11. And it pretty much probably would be higher if it was the... I'm really losing my voice now. Wow, my voice is drastically getting lost right now. I would probably have it higher if it was the complete show. It does have what might be one of the best redunzals. It is absolutely fantastic, but it's at 11. And then this one I have at number 8, the 1131. I think that would be ranked higher if the sound was better, but it is quite a difference in sound compared to some of the more recent ones. So it had to be dropped down there. And that Indie Downers jam, for as awesome it is that he goes into it, not much really comes of it. It's just really cool to hear. And the I'm the Slime is really cool to hear. But again, it's just like, hey, we're in, we're out, we're done. There's an I'm the Slime. So yeah, that's where I have them. But anything from like 11 on is just fantastic. Wow, I'm really losing my voice here. All right, so I'm going to try to wrap this up and maybe go drink some tea and try to save my voice so I can speak over the next couple of days. All right, thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, share, comment. Peace. Talk to you later.